They say neighbors can be a blessing, but what if the one living next door turns your proudest moment into your deepest humiliation? Michael Parker had no idea that opening his garage door one morning would change the way his entire neighborhood looked at him. Michael Parker had always been a man of quiet determination. He wasn't wealthy, nor did he live extravagantly. Every dollar he earned was carefully saved, every overtime shift counted, every dream put on hold, except one. For years, he dreamed of owning a car that wasn't just reliable, but something that finally reflected his hard work. That dream finally came true when he purchased a silver SUV from a dealership just 2 days earlier. Driving it home felt like carrying a trophy. To him, it wasn't just a vehicle. It was proof that patience, sacrifice, and dedication could pay off. When he parked it in his garage, he whispered a soft prayer of gratitude, smiling as he turned off the ignition. The next morning, Michael woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight spilled across the quiet cul-de-sac as he brewed coffee, humming a small tune. He couldn't wait to take his new car out for a morning drive. There was a sense of joy bubbling inside him, like a child unwrapping a gift for the second time. He pressed the garage button, and with a slow creak, the door began to rise. The silver SUV glistened under the fresh morning light, its polished body reflecting the neighborhood trees. Michael took a deep breath of pride. This was his moment. But just as he reached for the driver's door, a sharp voice sliced through the calm morning. "What do you think you're doing?" Michael turned, startled. His neighbor Karen was striding across the lawn, her face red with outrage. Her eyes narrowed like she'd caught a criminal in the act. Karen was known for her complaints about trash bins, grass lengths, and parking spaces. But this was different. The anger in her voice was personal. "That's my car," she shouted, pointing directly at the SUV. "I just bought it yesterday, and you're trying to steal it." Michael froze, unable to comprehend what he was hearing. For a moment, he thought she must be joking, but Karen wasn't smiling. She was already fumbling for her phone, muttering about calling the police. The peaceful morning he had imagined shattered instantly. Michael's dream car, the reward of his hard work, had become the very thing dragging him into conflict. His heart pounded as neighbors' curtains twitched open. He had no idea that this accusation was just the beginning of something far bigger. Michael stood frozen, his hand still resting on the door handle of his silver SUV. The morning air, once calm and refreshing, now felt heavy with tension. Karen's voice carried across the street, sharp and accusing, like a siren cutting through silence. "You think you can hide it in your garage?" she shouted. "That's my car. I paid for that exact model yesterday." Michael's mouth went dry. "Karen, this is my vehicle. I bought it from Sunrise Motors on Tuesday. I have all the paperwork inside." But Karen wasn't listening. She waved her hands dramatically, her voice growing louder with every word. The neighborhood was waking up. Curtains slid open, doors cracked, and curious eyes appeared. To them, it must have looked like a confrontation worth watching. "Don't lie to me," Karen snapped. "I put money down for the same SUV, the exact color, the exact trim. You think I wouldn't notice? You stole it." Her words pierced deeper than Michael expected. He wasn't just being accused, he was being branded as dishonest. A criminal right in front of his neighbors. A mix of humiliation and fear coiled inside him. What if they believed her? What if the police came and doubted his word over hers? Karen pulled out her phone and began dialing. Her voice rang out clearly as she told the dispatcher, "Yes, I'd like to report a car theft. The man is standing right in front of me, and the stolen vehicle is here in his garage." Michael's chest tightened. "Karen, please stop. This is a mistake," he said firmly, but with a tremor in his voice. "I worked for this car. I can prove it." But the call was already connected. Karen's exaggerated tone made her sound like a victim. She described Michael, his address, even the supposed crime she had just witnessed. Within minutes, the shrill sound of approaching sirens echoed down the street. Michael's stomach dropped. The neighbors leaned in closer from their porches, whispering among themselves. Some looked skeptical, others suspicious. Michael glanced at his SUV, the car he had dreamed of for years. Instead of pride, all he felt was dread. What was supposed to symbolize his hard work had suddenly become evidence against him. As the flashing red and blue lights grew nearer, He realized this wasn't just an embarrassing misunderstanding, it was about to become a public battle for his dignity. The distant wail of sirens grew louder until the glow of red and blue flashed across Maplewood Estates. Michael's stomach knotted. His fingers, still clutching his car keys, trembled as he glanced at Karen. She stood tall, chin raised, almost victorious, as though the arrival of the police would seal her case. 2 patrol cars rolled up, stopping right in front of Michael's driveway. Doors opened, and 2 uniformed officers stepped out, hands resting near their belts, eyes scanning the scene with caution. The murmurs of neighbors grew louder as more gathered, forming a silent audience. "There he is!" Karen shouted, pointing dramatically at Michael. "That's the man. He stole my SUV and tried to hide it in his garage." The officers turned to Michael, their expressions unreadable. "Sir, step away from the vehicle, please," one of them instructed. Michael's heart pounded. He raised his hand slightly to show calm compliance. "Officers, this is my car. I purchased it 2 days ago. I have all the documents inside." Karen interrupted, her voice rising over his. "Don't believe him. I made a down payment for this exact car at Sunrise Motors. This man is lying. He stole it before I could bring it home." The officers exchanged a glance. One of them motioned Michael to stay put, while the other approached the SUV. The officer asked calmly, "Do you have proof of purchase with you?" "Yes," Michael replied quickly. "The contract, the registration, everything is in my house. I can bring it." But Karen wasn't finished. She stepped closer, lowering her voice as though sharing a secret with the officers. "You don't know this man like I do. He acts quiet, but he's suspicious. I've seen him doing things late at night. He probably forged those papers." The accusation stung deeper than Michael expected. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to breathe. Losing his composure now would only make things worse. The first officer looked at Michael again. "Sir, let's handle this step by step. Can you calmly retrieve your documents? We'll need to verify." Michael nodded, though the weight of every eye in the neighborhood bore down on him. Neighbors whispered, some shaking their heads in doubt, others watching silently, unsure who to believe. As he walked toward his front door to get the papers, he realized something chilling. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about his reputation, his integrity, and the kind of man the neighborhood thought he was. One lie had the power to destroy everything. Michael returned from his house with a neatly folded folder in his hands. His palms were damp, his heart still racing, but his voice was steady as he offered it to the nearest officer. "Here are the documents," he said. "The dealership contract, the receipt, and the registration papers. You'll see everything matches." The officer took them carefully and began looking through. Meanwhile, Karen folded her arms and stepped forward with a smirk. "Oh, don't waste your time. He's good at pretending. That paperwork could be fake. Anyone with a printer could put this together." Michael's jaw tightened. He wanted to shout back, to defend himself against the blatant disrespect, but he remembered his father's advice. The truth doesn't need shouting. It just needs to be shown. So, he stayed quiet. The officer inspecting the documents pulled out his radio, calling in the SUV's VIN number. The second officer walked around the vehicle, checking the tags and scanning details into his device. Every small beep and click made the air feel heavier. Meanwhile, the neighbors leaned in closer, whispering. Some looked at Michael with doubt, others with sympathy, but no one spoke up. It felt like the entire street was holding its breath, waiting for a verdict. Karen, however, wouldn't let the silence sit. She raised her voice again, pointing directly at Michael. "Officers, do you really not see what's happening here? This man doesn't belong in a car like that. Look at him. He doesn't even dress like someone who can afford it. I know what I paid for, and that is my car." The insult struck like a slap. Michael's chest ached, not because of her words, but because of how loudly they were spoken, for everyone to hear. His hard work, his dignity, his very identity was being dragged into question because someone decided he didn't look worthy enough. "Ma'am," the officer finally said firmly, holding up a hand, "we are verifying everything. Please allow us to do our job." Karen huffed, but she stepped back slightly, muttering under her breath. Michael stood still, shoulders tense but head held high. He knew the truth was on his side, but in that moment, surrounded by flashing lights and staring eyes, it didn't feel like enough. This wasn't just a dispute anymore. It was a battle for respect. And no matter what the papers proved, Michael knew the real fight was happening in the eyes of his neighbors, who were deciding who to believe, the calm man holding documents or the loud woman pointing fingers. The officer stood by Michael's SUV, speaking quietly into his radio as Karen tapped her foot impatiently, arms crossed. She wore the expression of someone certain victory was hers, but Michael focused on breathing slowly, keeping calm as the weight of dozens of eyes pressed against him. Every second felt like an hour. His life savings were tied to that silver SUV, and now his character was being tested just as much as his ownership. Finally, the officer's radio crackled back with confirmation. He nodded once, then turned toward his partner. Registration matches. Vehicle is legally under Michael Parker's name. For a moment, silence fell across the street. The neighbors leaned in closer, waiting. The truth was clear, but Karen's voice quickly broke the quiet. "That can't be right," she snapped, her cheeks flushing. "I put a deposit on this exact model at the dealership. They must have mixed up the paperwork. He probably tricked them." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, the VIN number is unique. There's no mistake. This car belongs to Mr. Parker." Michael felt his chest loosen as relief washed through him, but alongside it came another emotion: hurt. Karen wasn't just wrong. She was unwilling to accept the truth, even when it was staring her in the face. The neighbors began murmuring among themselves. Whispers carried, "So it really is his car. She was wrong all along. Poor guy." The tone of the crowd shifted. Suspicion that once pressed on Michael's shoulders now turned toward Karen. Her bravado began to crack. She looked around, realizing the support she expected wasn't there. Still, she muttered, "Well, maybe it just looks like mine. Anyone could have mistaken it. It's not my fault." But the truth was undeniable. The SUV gleamed in the sunlight. Its papers verified, its ownership confirmed. Michael didn't gloat, didn't shout, didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he simply said, steady and firm, "This car is mine. I worked for it. I bought it. And I don't need to prove my worth to you." The neighbors nodded silently, some with small gestures of respect. Karen shifted uncomfortably, her confidence deflating like air from a balloon. For Michael, the truth had finally spoken, but the damage of the accusation lingered. He had won the battle of proof, but the scars of being falsely judged remained. And though Karen walked away that day, the weight of her false words would follow her longer than she imagined. Even though the officers had confirmed the SUV was legally his, Michael couldn't shake the weight pressing on his chest. Relief should have washed everything away, but instead, he felt drained, almost hollow. What should have been one of the happiest weeks of his life had been tainted by suspicion, doubt, and humiliation. As the police wrapped up their notes and reassured him that the matter was closed, Michael could feel the stares of his neighbors. They weren't as sharp as before. Many now seemed apologetic, even sympathetic. But the damage had already been done. He had stood on his own driveway, accused of being a thief, his name whispered as though he were guilty before he even had the chance to speak. Karen had already retreated to her house, her head down, her energy subdued, but her words lingered in the air, echoing louder than the sirens had earlier. "You don't belong in a car like that." Those words cut deeper than the accusation itself. They weren't about the car, they were about him, about whether he looked like someone who deserved what he had worked for. Michael sat on the edge of his porch after the officers left, staring at the SUV parked safely inside the garage. He traced every reflection on its polished surface, remembering the long nights he had worked, the overtime shifts, the skipped holidays, and the sacrifices each hour had built toward that purchase. To him, the SUV wasn't just transportation, it was proof of perseverance, of never giving up. Yet now, instead of joy, all he felt was a gnawing sense of injustice. He had done everything right, and still, he had been treated as though he had done something wrong. His phone buzzed with a message from his younger sister. "Proud of you, Mike. Ignore the noise." He smiled faintly. She didn't know what had happened, but her words reminded him of something important. People who truly know him never doubted his honesty. The sun began to set, painting the street in orange and gold. Some neighbors waved gently as they walked their dogs, small gestures to show they knew the truth now. But Michael didn't wave back. He wasn't angry, just tired. That night, before heading inside, he whispered a quiet promise to himself. He would not let one person's false judgment define him. Still, he couldn't deny the toll it had taken. The car was his. Yes, but the peace he once felt in his own neighborhood was gone, replaced by a silence heavier than words. The evening air settled quietly over Maplewood Estates, casting long shadows across the neat lawns and reflecting off the silver SUV parked safely in Michael Parker's garage. The vehicle, polished and gleaming, symbolized years of sacrifice, hard work, and patience. Yet tonight, it felt less like a triumph and more like a reminder of the turmoil that had shaken him just a day earlier. Though the police had verified that the SUV belonged to him, confirming his legal ownership beyond any doubt, the emotional residue lingered. Relief was tempered by fatigue and lingering embarrassment. Standing accused in front of neighbors, with Karen screaming and calling 911, had left an invisible mark. The whispers and curious stares, even after the truth was revealed, still felt like a weight pressing against him. Michael's mind replayed every moment. Karen storming across the lawn, pointing a finger, insisting he had stolen the car. The adrenaline, fear, and humiliation. The quiet dread of watching neighbors form their own judgments before he could even speak. It wasn't just about the car. It was about his reputation, his character, and how easily one person's assumptions could shape public perception. Sitting on the porch, Michael ran a hand across the hood of the SUV. The car represented more than an achievement. It was a testament to the countless hours he had worked, the overtime shifts he had taken, the weekends sacrificed, and the unwavering patience he had maintained. Yet in one morning, all of it had been threatened by suspicion, jealousy, and pride. And yet, as he reflected, he felt a shift inside him. Anger and resentment flickered briefly, but he consciously let them go. He couldn't control Karen's actions, nor could he undo the initial assumptions of his neighbors. What he could control, he realized, was his response. Maintaining dignity, showing patience, and holding on to truth were far more powerful than shouting or retaliation. Over the following days, Michael began to notice subtle changes. Some neighbors approached him with quiet gestures of apology, acknowledging they had jumped to conclusions. Others offered simple nods or friendly waves, recognizing the truth without a word. Karen, meanwhile, had withdrawn, her once confident demeanor deflating. She remained in her house more than usual, perhaps realizing the futility of her accusation. Michael's younger sister reached out as well. "I saw what happened," she said gently over the phone. "I'm proud of how you handled it. You stayed calm, and you didn't let her words define you." Her words brought a warmth that no neighborly approval could match. True trust, he realized, came from those who truly knew him. And that was enough. He reflected on a broader lesson. Life isn't about avoiding conflict or ensuring everyone believes in your truth. It's about living with integrity, even when others doubt you. His SUV, shiny and secure, had become more than a symbol of financial success. It represented resilience, patience, and unwavering adherence to one's values in the face of challenge. The street outside remained calm, almost serene. As Michael looked across the neighborhood, he noticed a subtle shift in perception. Some neighbors now nodded with quiet respect. Even if not everyone admitted their earlier doubts, the truth had prevailed, and he had weathered the storm with composure. Finally, he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The ordeal had ended, not with anger, bitterness, or revenge, but with personal growth, self-respect, and quiet triumph. The SUV remained a shining reminder that achievements built on hard work cannot be taken away by lies or assumptions. Michael breathed deeply, feeling an enduring sense of calm. He had faced accusation, doubt, and humiliation, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more grounded. Life would continue to bring challenges, but he now knew the truth, patience, and dignity would always guide him through. In that realization, he finally felt complete. The battle had been more than about a car. It had been about integrity, character, and resilience. And in that, Michael Parker had already won.